They're saying that I took a gun, put it up, and killed another human being.
No, I'm not the one that shot him. I wouldn't hurt him.
Then who did, Dee Dee? Tell us.
Abraham Shakespeare was the hardworking gentleman from Plant City, Florida, who'd won the lottery. His win was more a curse than a blessing, however. Hundreds of people came out of the woodwork asking for money, until he felt like a cash machine. Suddenly Diddy showed up in his life, promising to help him with his finances. After transferring all his assets into her name, he mysteriously disappeared. Nobody knew where he was, and Diddy gave all sorts of excuses, from contracting AIDS to going to Haiti. Abraham's cousin Cedric finally reported him missing to the cops, and within very little time their suspicions turned towards Diddy more. By the time part 1 ended, the cops were tracing Diddy's calls, put a tracker on a Hummer, and discovered that Diddy asked Shakespeare's friend Greg Smith to phone Shakespeare's mother pretending to be her son. And that's where our bizarre story left off. My name is Jace, and this is Musical True Crime. After a series of bizarre events, the investigators decided to look into Diddy's colorful past. They found a treasure trove of very disturbing events. Diddy grew up in a relatively happy family on Happy Acres Lane in Riverview, Florida, eventually moving to Plant City when she was 7. By all accounts, her youth was normal and carefree. Everyone thought she was bubbly. She was like champagne. Bubbly. In high school, things started to change. Diddy became hyper-focused on class division and decided that her modest upbringing was not something she was proud of. She began asking her family to drop her off a block from high school so the other students couldn't see her poor ass car. She became a nursing assistant after high school. Everyone said she was kind and generous. She got married to a man named James Moore and 2 years later gave birth to RJ. In 1995, tragedy struck. Diddy was involved in a head-on collision. 2 people died, but Diddy lived. Her mother wondered if she might have had an undetected injury that might have led to her erratic behavior, which we get into now.
Dee Dee, such a normal kid. Dee Dee, never stood up shit. A happy kid on Happy Acre Lane, bubbly like a glass of champagne. Made friends easily, don't you know? She didn't lie, didn't pee in the night in the snow, didn't twist the truth to suit her own agenda. Didn't seem like a patient that was mental. Dee Dee, you used to be normal. Dee Dee, now you're so abnormal. Dee Dee, you're so immoral. Dee Dee, so caring and kind, became a nurse. She had a sharp mind. She didn't practice the dark arts, stayed home and read Karl Marx. She used to really hate Evel Knievel, didn't try to be so dark and evil. She wanted to be rich, but I don't understand how her behavior got so out of hand. Dee Dee, you used to be normal. Dee Dee, now you're so abnormal. Dee Dee, you're so immoral.
Diddy worked for Arcadia Healthcare in Tampa, Florida, while she sold cell phones on the side with her co-worker and her husband. She convinced the higher-ups that Plant City was an untapped gold mine and moved there to work for the Arcadia branch. Soon after moving to Plant City, things got strange. A senior staff member at Arcadia noticed a spike in spending. They were hemorrhaging money, $60,000 to be exact. They discovered that Diddy was embezzling money and turned her over to the cops. But before she was investigated, the Plant City branch mysteriously caught fire. Funny thing was, only files were burned. Not the furniture, not the walls, not the carpet, no, just the files. The fire marshal couldn't prove that Diddy committed larceny, so they couldn't charge him. No proof, no charge. So Arcadia and Diddy agreed that as long as Diddy paid them $25,000, all charges and investigations would be dropped. However, just as she was supposed to pay, she used one of the oldest tricks in the book, blackmail. She threatened to tell the press that they were knowingly employing people with AIDS. It's unknown whether it's true or not, but they couldn't risk the bad press. They dropped the matter entirely and Diddy got off scot-free. In 1997, at 27, Diddy was convicted for shoplifting in Polk County. Good old 5-finger discount. She got probation. In 2001, her and her family got behind in rent, so she made up a story about a blazing warning sign on her front lawn. They still got evicted. In August of 2001, Diddy was arrested for insurance fraud and filing a false police report. She owed $46,000 on a Lincoln Navigator, and the bank was threatening to repossess it due to missed payments. So she came up with a scheme. She had a friend drive her to another town. While in the car, she taped up her wrists and leaped out of the car into the ditch. A stranger stopped and she told them that she was raped by 3 Hispanic men who also stole her car. As the police were investigating the crime, they discovered that Moore had been banned from selling cell phones by the company Nextel.
By 2004, Nextel had amassed nearly 20 million subscribers.
Due to an internal fraud investigation, she had stolen $100,000. A few days later, a man in a neighboring county phoned the cops to say that the Lincoln, which was apparently stolen by the rapists, was actually in his garage. One of the men drove it there at Diddy's behest. A second man told the authorities that Diddy asked him to be part of this fake theft and plan to get revenge on former co-worker from Nextel, the cell phone company. Despite how extensive and insane all of this was, Diddy ended up with a year of probation. Nothing more, nothing less. She also lost her Lincoln Navigator. Her own father had been known to say that she tells the fibbliest fibs. After digging into the fraudster's past, the investigators finally had an inkling what they were up against. They were dealing with a woman who would stop at nothing to get what she wanted, including lies, blackmailing, and stealing. Now, let's get back to Greg Smith. If you recall, Greg was the one who called Abraham's mother pretending to be Abraham, because Diddy asked him to. Anyway, the investigators called Greg Smith back in. He was concerned. He didn't want any trouble. They asked him for his help. Considering his predicament, he decided to fully cooperate with the cops. When they said jump, he asked how high. When they asked him to wear a wire, he said, wire me up. And they did. But when he met Diddy soon afterwards, she was pulling at his shirt, acting odd and clearly looking for a wire. This made Greg nervous and he aborted the mission. The cops were upset about it, but he explained that she was searching for a wire and it was simply unfeasible. They suggested he try it again, but he wouldn't do it. Too risky. Then he told them, look, I'm from the streets. I got a better idea. Greg is a Red Bull man. Fuck coffee. He gets his daily jolt from that infamous energy drink. He decided to MacGyver his Red Bull can. He shaved off the top, put foam in the bottom, put the mic in the can, and the lid back on. Voila! A perfect recording device that could sit in the car. Not only that, but when Greg smoked, he would tap his ciggy onto the lid of the can. Smokers use cans and bottles as ashtrays all the time, so it wouldn't arouse any suspicion. And it worked like a charm.
Greg's got ideas that the cops are kinda jealous of. She makes a mark out of a rebel can. Wants to see Dee Dee pay for the crime she's committed. He's from the streets, yeah, he's a backdoor man. Greg Smith is calm, Greg Smith is down with putting Dee Dee behind bars. Greg Smith is calm, Greg Smith is down with putting Dee Dee behind bars. Let's put our plan in action. Let's make Dee Dee pay. Let's make her pay through her teeth. Greg's tired of inaction. He knows it's time for justice. He knows it's time for relief. Greg Smith is calm. Greg Smith is down with putting Dee Dee behind bars. Greg Smith is calm. Greg Smith is down with putting Dee Dee behind bars.
Since the new setup was working, Greg and Diddy met up several times over the course of the next few weeks. Every time they chatted, if Dee would veer off into talking about bullshit, Greg would steer the conversation back to Abraham to get her talking. This led to hours of recording. Not only that, but she started to trust him over time. Everybody was thinking that she did something, and so she needed a solution. She told him, her new body, she needed damage control. She asked him if he knew anyone who would take the rap for Shakespeare's death. The cat was out of the bag. Learning of this new development, the cops took Greg aside and suggested he create a fake relative named Mike Smith, who was going to the slammer for 20 years for drug charges. He did so, and Dee Dee fell for it, hook, line and sinker. On January 21st, 2010, a meeting was arranged. Thus began Dee Dee's downfall. Who was Mike Smith? He was, you guessed it, an undercover police officer. Dee Dee told Mike that she felt Abraham was dead, but of course she had nothing to do with it. Mike pressed for details and if he was going to take the rap for a crime that he had nothing to do with. She said she'd get the details as soon as she could. He also wanted 50 grand, 10 up front. I'd have to sell something, she said. Yeah, like her soul.
Then what do you want?
50 grand.
Can I do it in payments? Because I don't have that kind of cash. I'm going to have to sell something.
I'm going to need 10 up front. Once I do this, make sure my boy get the money.
She met up with Greg again and provided him with a .38 caliber pistol, registered in her name and apparently used in the murder case. She drove him to a house she had purchased with Abraham's cash and pointed out a big old slab of concrete. This was where Abraham Shakespeare was buried, she told Greg. Greg was stunned, but maintained his composure. His friend, his buddy, who had hung out so many hours in the barber shop, sweeping up hair and telling bad jokes, lie there under the concrete. She said they would have to burn his remains in a kettle trough on the property and suggested that Greg would bring some marshmallows. Gotta love Dee Dee for her gutless humor. This brings us to the end of part 2. What do you think about these new developments? Are you surprised that Dee Dee turned out to be such an absolute lunatic? Comment your comment in the comments. Tune in for part 3 next Tuesday to witness Dee Dee's downfall. This is when her entire world comes crashing down. And remember, be safe out there.